So the Whiskey Rebellion, to my disappointment, was not just about a ton of angry drunk people. You kind of got to start with the American Revolution, where the United States incurred a massive amount of debt from the cost of war. And Alexander Hamilton, who's a pivotal character in the whole causation of this rebellion, he proposed the Compromise of 1790, which had the federal government take control and responsibility of all outstanding debt from the war from the states, which in turn crippled the American government financially. A year later, the American government was completely broke. And Alexander Hamilton, who was the Treasury Secretary at the time, told President George Washington that in order to climb out of this insurmountable amount of debt, that they needed to impose a tax on the sale and production of whiskey, which was the whiskey tax of 1791. This really pissed off some farmers and distillers in western Pennsylvania, and their non-compliance was evident immediately. Besides blatant and outright refusal to pay the federal tax, a lot of protesters resorted to violence, and the federal tax collectors were oftentimes attacked on their collection routes. There were many instances where they were tarred and feathered, or their families were attacked, and this went on for a couple of years. It didn't come to a standstill. The tension and discontent of people in western Pennsylvania was just escalating until it reached its peak in 1794. A wealthy landowner in western Pennsylvania by the name of John Neville was housing a tax collector and federal marshal, David Lennox. He was also accompanied by 10 American soldiers due to the continuing violence in the area. In July of 1794, an angry mob of 700 people marched upon his estate at Bower Hill, where they burnt his house to the ground. No one was killed in the incident. However, the new rebellion gained even more momentum, and 7,000 people decided to march on Pittsburgh to finally put an end to this tax collection. The attack on Pittsburgh and the disobedience to the whiskey tax as a whole was a real threat and test to the new federal government's authority or power. So, in response, George Washington met with his cabinet officials and assumed emergency power, where he put together an armed militia of roughly 12,000 soldiers in order to suppress the rebellion in Pennsylvania. Now, in light of the news, these rebels scattered and fled from the city without any violence or trouble. Just the sheer display of power to put together such an immense force was enough to shut down the rebellion completely. Ultimately, the Whiskey Rebellion was a pivotal moment in American history because it challenged a newly established federal government. This sort of resistance has shaped the interactions and dynamics between the government and its citizens now for generations.